योगः कर्मसु कौशलम्.
Hi, I, Dr. S.K. Chaturvedi, thanks to UGC Human Resource Development Center of Gujarat University for giving me an opportunity to connect with you and deliver my session on judicial process, judicial pronouncement, and legitimacy. I thank Professor Dr. Jagdish Joshi, Professor and Director of UGC HRDC Gujarat University. HRDC Gujarat University is ranked as 15 in India and number 1 in Gujarat. It is pioneer and created history are benchmarks by organizing. There are some achievement regarding HRDC Gujarat University till date. Some of them are the first of its kind online refresher course in India in the year 2018-19. About 2,500 participants have attended it. The first of its kind online refresher program in English language teaching ARPIT with record break 9,000 participants in the year 2019-20 and 3,500 participants in the similar program in the year 2020-21. The first ever online short term course on e content development during lockdown and unlock. More than 130 courses with about 5,000 participants have successfully completed. The participants were from across the country in the said program. The first online professional development program for the administrative staff of universities during lockdown with 105 participants. The first of its kind PhD coursework in blended mode for all the registered PhD scholars of Gujarat University and other universities. About 900 PhD scholars have successfully completed coursework. UGC HRDC Gujarat University was funded by MHRD under RUSA grant of rupees 3.33 crores. It is one of the very few HRDCs which have very fruitfully and successfully organized the program under it. It has collaborated with IIMA, SPIPA, IIT Delhi and Mumbai, JNU, Delhi University, the Lal Bahadur Shastri National Academy of Administration, Mussoorie, Mumbai University, Implemented, St. Xavier's College, Mumbai, NCRT, and UGC, etc. The website of UGC HRDC Gujarat University is very dynamic, and the journal of UGC HRDC Gujarat University is also indexed journal. It is very innovative and established training institute and provides consultancy also. It invites international resource person in the programs. It has MOU with UK and Canadian universities. Video feedback of the participants are collected and kept on the website. With this introduction about the HRDC Gujarat University, now come to the point and today's session of topic judicial process, judicial pronouncement and judicial legitimacy. Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes once remarked, "My freedom to swing my arms stops where the other man's nose begins." Judicial process is the method of attaining justice which seeks to achieve the desirable and prohibit undesirables. Justice is an essential element of any polity. Without a legal system, force alone would settle disputes. The suitable concept of justice is traceable today only by legal characterization. The philosophy of justice in India is a balance between the rights of an individual and the duties of state on one hand towards the individual and on the other hand the social body as a whole. Let us come to the point the meaning of judicial process and concept of judicial process. The judicial process is the procedure for resolving disputes through the court system. It deals with the matters before it rather than with concepts. It focuses on procedural rather than administrative matters. Procedural matters includes scheduling, the time allowed for filing an appeal and hearing motions. To understand what is the meaning of judicial process in India, we must first understand what is justice and the meaning of judicial and process separately. Justice is an irrational term. In layman terms, it means absence of fear. It comes with lack of arbitrariness, freedom of liberty and equality, and equal access to quick, affordable, satisfactory, credible dispute settlement forum. In nutshell, we can say that justice means rule of law. Judicial means relating to the administration of justice or the function of a judge. And process means series of actions directed to some end or continuous action or series of changes and to handle according to a routine procedure. Thus, we can say that everything done by judges in the process of delivery of justice is called judicial process. It basically confines itself to the study of is to ought. Now come to the point nature of judicial process. What are the nature of judicial process? In the nature of judicial process, Benjamin Cardozo, who later served on the Supreme Court of America, accepted the fact that judges do make law. However, he stated that the judge legislate only between gaps. It means if there is no law, then judge can make the law. He fills the open space in the law. Cardozo Justice further states that justice according to law means the judge, even when he is free, is still not wholly free. W. Friedman also said justice is an irrational concept. The case lands in a court and is brought to a logical end. And when the justice is delivered, judges adopts various methods to deliver justice and lay down several principles for expeditious delivery of justice. Judges follow certain methods, but over time, many Supreme Court has also laid down certain principles which are followed by lower judiciary. In modern democracies, state is a protector of the public rights and liberties and provides justice through its third pillar, that is judiciary. Therefore, judiciary is the main source of judicial process and it is the life and blood of justice. It demands the uniformity in the legal system. Further, judicial process is important weapon and paramount norms of justice for strengthening the uniform legal integrals. The common law countries like England recognize judicial process as a rule of practice rather than the rule of law, because rule of practice is essential requirement in the hierarchical system of the courts. This system demands the uniformity in the legal integrals. The court should follow judicial process because it marks the path of justice. In Indian context, Honorable former Chief Justice of India, Justice A. M. Ahmadi, said to understand judicial process in India, we must understand why the nature of judicial process in India has undergone a metamorphosis. The reason underlying the expansion of the scope of judicial review and the legitimacy of such a response and the need for and factual reality of what has euphemistically been called judicial legislation. H. L. A. Hart also accepted the judicial process as binding and authoritative force on lower courts under the rule of recognition. Hart recognized the judicial precedent as process of the court in binding in nature on the lower courts on the same manner as legislation. Now, what are the provisions related to judicial process under the Constitution of India? There are many provisions, many articles mentioned about the judicial process under the Constitution of India. According to Article 141, the law declared by Supreme Court shall be binding all courts within the territory of India. Similarly, Article 225 gives jurisdiction to the existing high courts and gives the power of administration of justice in the court, including any power to make rules of court and to regulate the sitting of the court and of members thereof sitting alone or in division court. Article 226 gives a supervisory power to the union over the state for compliance of laws, and Article 356 read with Article 365 is the consequential result for non-compliance of constitutional obligation by the state. Now, judicial process in modern India. The main attributes of this system can be explained with some important, which are as follows. The first one is formal and informal access to justice. Modern access to justice can categorize into formal and informal access to justice. The formal access to justice is basically adjudication of disputes by the courts which follow the rules of civil and criminal procedure, whereas informal access to justice includes alternative modes of dispute resolution such as arbitration, conciliation, mediation, lok adalat, and nyay panchayat, which are merely of supplementary nature to the court system. They are not bound by the provision of CPC and IPC but have to follow the principles of natural law. Informal and formal modes of justice both are against the principle of parity of law devised by Article 14 of the Constitution, because in informal modes of access to justice one has to often compromise with his legal rights in interest of time, cost of money, etc., which is very much against the guarantee of Article 14 and duty imposed on state therein. The second point here is hurdles in the access to justice. So, formal mode of access to justice also has many drawbacks, like the first is law of limitation. In this aspect, the aggrieved person has to satisfy, first of all, that his suit is not barred by the Law of Limitation Act 1963, and if barred by Law of Limitation, the judge may or may not entertain his suit. Thus, it is absolutely denial of Article 14, which imposes unqualified duty on state to provide equal protection of law and is anathema to any kind of arbitrariness. The second is court fees. With the institution of the suit, a court fee is required, which is determined by the court according to the provisions of the Court Fee Act of 1870, and on failure to pay the court fee or postal charges, the suit may be dismissed. The High Cost of Court Fee Act is unconstitutional under Article 13, Subclause 2, read with Article 14, which was originally a method of raising fund and exploitation by ruler on rule, so that there can be less accountability of the state. The third point is advocacy. Advocates are inseparable part of the adversarial system, wherein the role of judge is like a referee who decides the case on account of the performance of both parties' advocates. He never intends to provide the justice by bringing the truth, but to award the best competitor. Thus, in this situation, the determining factor for the judicial process and justice is the competency of lawyer, which depends upon the financial capacity of the party, which results in absolute denial of the parity of power guaranteed by Article 14. The next point is procedural hurdles. After the institution of the suit, the aggrieved person has to go through the procedure of either CPC or CRPC, that is Civil Procedure Code or Criminal Procedure Code, which does not reflect the value of the Constitution but the values chosen by the colonial masters. The aggrieved party has to face inordinate delay in getting justice due to unnecessary access time given in filing of written statement, counter statement, amendments in plaint, filing of unnecessary affidavit, adjournment at every stage of the proceeding, professional interest of the lawyer in prolonging the life of the suit, huge arrears of cases, or other reasons for causing delay in getting justice. Even if the aggrieved person gets the degree, its education is not easy. The third point here is delivery of justice. Delivery of justice is basically the part and parcel of the executive branch of the government, popularly identified as the access to justice through administrative authorities. Article 256 gives a supervisory power to the union over state for compliance of law, but when the executive fails to perform his duty, the courts venture to deliver justice as a corrective measures. Now, after the concept about the judicial process, come to the second point, that is judicial pronouncement. There are many judicial pronouncements, many cases decided by the Supreme Court. The recent one is the legitimacy of capital punishment, which is famous as the Sabnam Ali case. This case is known as first women hanged in independent India. The judicial system of India is on the verge of marking a landmark decision of granting capital punishment to a female, which is a first in independent India. This decision has set out its own set of controversies. Gender disparity pervades all facets of social life, and capital trials worsen pre existing gender inequality. At the same time, it has emerged that gender based bias in capital cases is a complicated problem, as there is always more than one type of prejudice at work, and these prejudices may work both for and against female capital defendants. The another important case is Visakha versus State of Rajasthan. This case judgment is one of the most gifted piece of law the court has ever enacted in its history since its inception. The Honorable Court did come up with such guidelines as Visakha guidelines, which form the basis of the Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace Prevention, Prohibition and Redressal Act 2013. In this case, sexual harassment at workplace is a clear violation of gender equality, which in turn violates these integral rights of the female class. Such harassment also results in the freedom provided under Article 19, Clause 1, Subclause D. G. Further, the working conditions must be appropriate and not hostile to the women employees of the organization. Further, the female employees should feel a sense of equality in the atmosphere. Another important case is Sahbanu Begum case. This is milestone case for Muslim women's fight for rights. In this case, the Supreme Court upheld the right to alimony for a Muslim woman and said that the Code of Criminal Procedure 1973, Section 125, is applicable to all the citizens irrespective of their religion. This set off a political controversy, and the government of the day overturned this judgment by passing the Muslim Women Protection on Divorce Act 1986, according to which alimony need be given only during the iddat period. Another very recent case is Saira Banu versus Union of India. This case is known as Triple Talaq case. At the time of judgment of this case, it was beyond acceptance for the Indian masses, but in the recent years, when the Triple Talaq law was passed, no one raised questions against it. Back then in 1986, despite judicial pronouncement, scrapping triple talaq was next to impossible. In this case, talaq ul biddat, which is the issue of controversy, talaq ul biddat is although banned in Shias, however, in Hanafi school is thought as sinful, but it practiced by a large Muslim community who follow Hanafi school. In this type of talaq, the husband does not follow the approved form of talaq, that is talaqul sunnat, and he neither waits for iddat period nor to the abstention from sexual intercourse. This was an escape route developed by the Islamic patriarchal society to avoid their marriage. Therefore, as per majority, it was held that the triple talaq or talaq e biddat not protected by the exception laid down in Article 25 Constitution of India. That is, the court found the said practice not an essential element of Islamic religion. The court justified its point of view in the sense that although it is practiced by the Hanafi school, but it is considered sinful in it. Triple talaq against the basic tenets of Quran, and whatever is against Quran is contrary to the Shariat. Therefore, what is bad in theology can't be good in law. The another leading case which is related to the legitimacy is Keswanand Bharti case. This judgment defined the basic structure of the constitution. Supreme Court held that although no part of the constitution including fundamental rights was beyond the parliament's amending power, the basic structure of the constitution could not be abrogated even by a constitutional amendment. This is the basis in Indian law in which the judiciary can strike down any amendment passed by the parliament that is in conflict with the basic structure of the constitution. In another case, that is in Menka Gandhi case, a main issue in this case was whether the right to go abroad is a part of the right to personal liberty under Article 21. The Supreme Court held that it is included in the right to personal liberty. Article 21 says protection of right to life and personal liberty. That is, no one can be judged, or we can say that no person shall be deprived to his life and personal liberty except according to the procedure established by law. The Supreme Court also ruled that the mere existence of an enabling law was not enough to restrain personal liberty. Such a law must also be just, fair, and reasonable, not fanciful, oppressive, or arbitrary. In the case of MC Mehta and Union of India, this case dealt with three important issues: scope of Article 32, rule of absolute liability or Ryland versus Fletcher to be followed, and issues of compensation. In this case, Supreme Court held that its power under Article 32 is not restricted to preventive measures but also remedial measures when rights are violated. It also held that in the case of industries engaged in hazardous or inherently dangerous activities, absolute liability was to be followed. Finally, it also said that the amount of compensation must be correlated to the magnitude and capacity of the industry so that it will be a deterrent. At that time, Bhopal gas leak case generated public opinion in the favor of strict liability, which reflected in the judgment as well, and hence the legitimacy was the highest degree. In another case, that is Aruna Sandbag case, in this case, the Supreme Court ruled that individual had a right to die with dignity and allowing passive euthanasia with guidelines. The need to reform Indian laws on euthanasia was triggered by the tragic case of Aruna Sabha case, who lay in the vegetative state for 42 years. In another famous case, that is Nota Judgment 2013, in this case, the Supreme Court, dealing with the issue of election reforms, held that democracy and free elections are part of the basic structure of the constitution. In a parliamentary democracy, a positive right not to vote is a part of voters' right to expression under Article 19, Clause 1, Subclause A, and it has to be recognized and given effect to the in the same manner as right to vote. This judgment introduced the nota, that is none of the above option for Indian voters. Include this case on 27 September 2013, the right to register a none of the above vote in elections was applied by the Supreme Court of India, which then ordered the Election Commission that all voting machines should be provided with a nota button so as to give voters the option to choose none of the above. In another case, that is Nirbhaya case, this case is also very important. In this case, feminist and women's movement gained momentum and incentive. The culprits were made an example of and condemned. Not just social, there were legal repercussions of the incident too. Introduction of the Criminal Law Amendment Act 2013 and definition of the rape under the Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act 2012, Indian Evidence Act 1872, Indian Penal Code 1860 and the Code of Criminal Procedure 1973. Until 2012, the definition of rape was restricted just to sexual intercourse. And the Criminal Law Amendment Act 2013 gave a broader meaning to the term rape. It amended the definition under the Section 375 of the IPC. Section 375 of the IPC, after the amendment, defines rape as any involuntary and forcible penetration without the woman's consent into the woman's body part. And in addition to Criminal Law Amendment Act 2013, Justice Verma Committee report also supported regarding the same. In another famous case, that is National Legal Service Authority versus Union of India, this case resulted in the recognition of transgender persons as a third gender. The Supreme Court also instructed the government to treat them as minorities and expand the reservations in education, jobs, etc. in, include this case in the background of society being more open and acceptable. One important another case is Navtej Singh Johar versus Union of India, relating to the repealing Section 377 IPC. In this case, Supreme Court ruled that Section 377 was unconstitutional insofar as it criminalized consensual sexual conduct between adults of the same sex. In this case, the five-judge bench of Supreme Court declared Section 377 as unconstitutional. This was a big step taken by Apex Court in enhancing the rights to its citizens and showing that Supreme Court always stands for the rights of the people of the country. It formulated a fundamental rights, that is right to love, from Article 21. This judgment not only marked the victory of the LGBT community in India but also gave them legal recognition. One another important case, Joseph Sain versus Union of India. This case is known as Gender Justice Section 497 IPC. In this case, the Supreme Court struck down Section 497 of IPC, which criminalized adultery, holding that it is violative of Article 14, 15, and 21 of the Constitution. The Supreme Court called the law unconstitutional because it treats a husband as the master. Further, the court held any provision of law affecting individual dignity and equality of women invites the wrath of the Constitution. It's time to say that the husband is not the master of the wife. Legal sovereignty of one sex over other sex is wrong. Another important famous case is ADM Jabalpur versus Sivakant Shukla. This case is known as habeas corpus case. The judgment in this case was laid down by five-judge bench consisting of Justice Ray, Justice Beg, Justice Chandrachud, Justice Bhagwati, and Justice Khanna. The majority ruling was pronounced by four judges, while Justice Khanna delivered a powerful dissent. In this case, a constitution bench by a majority of 4:1 ruled that while a proclamation of emergency is in operation, the right to move High Court under Article 226 for habeas corpus challenging illegal detention by state will stand suspended. The apex court said if extraordinary powers are given, they are given because the emergency is extraordinary and are limited to the period of the emergency. In this case, the judgment is more recognized for the dissenting opinion of Justice H.R. Khanna, in which he said, detention without trial is an anathema to all those love personal liberty. A dissent is an appeal to the brooding spirit of the law, to the intelligence of a future day, when a later decision may possibly correct the error into which the dissenting judge believes the court to have been betrayed. Now, moving to the point, independence of judiciary and judicial process. Independence of judiciary is also very important aspect in the context of judicial legitimacy and judicial process. The first judge case in this aspect are SP Gupta versus Union of India. This case was discussed about in consultation aspect. In this case, the Supreme Court was called upon to examine as to what does the word consultation in Article 124 subclass 2 and in Article 217 subclass 1 of the Constitution actually imply. The Supreme Court held by majority of 4:3 that in the appointment of judges of the Supreme Court or the High Court, the word consultation in Article 124 subclass 2 or in Article 217 subclass 1 of the Constitution does not mean concurrence. However, the concurrence with the Chief Justice of India must be full and effective. The apex court rejected the idea that the Chief Justice of India's opinion should have primacy and held that in the event of a disagreement, the ultimate power would rest with the Union government and not the Chief Justice of India. Further, in another case, which is known as Supreme Court Advocate on Record Association versus Union of India, decided in 1993, this case is known as the second judge's case. This is famous for the birth of collegium system. A 9-judge bench of the apex court re-examined the view expressed in the first judge case by a majority of 7:2, ruled that Article 124 and Article 217 of the Constitution had to be interpreted in a purposive and contextual manner. In this case, the court held that there should be a collegium consisting of the Chief Justice and the two other senior most judges of the Supreme Court for making proposal and appointment of judges. The Supreme Court held that in the event of conflict between the President and the Chief Justice of India with regard to the appointment of judges, it was the Chief Justice of India whose opinion would not only have primacy but would be determined in the matter. After the decision of this case, another case, third judge case, that is Inri Special Reference case, decided in 1999. This case arose out of a reference made by the President of India under Article 143 of the Constitution for advisory opinion of the Supreme Court. A 9-judge bench of the Supreme Court delivered a unanimous opinion and reaffirmed its verdict rendered in second judge's case. The only thing is that this reference introduced from the second judge case, that is Supreme Court Advocate on Record case, was to increase the number of judges in the collegium. The collegium was now to consist of the Chief Justice of India and the 4 other senior most judges of the Supreme Court. After few years, another famous case, National Judicial Appointment Case, it is also known as the Supreme Court Advocate on Record Association versus Union of India 2016. And the Constitution 99th Amendment Act 2014 and the National Judicial Appointment Commission Act 2014 sought to replace the collegium system with the National Judicial Appointment Commission, a body of compromising of the Chief Justice of India, two senior judges, the law minister, and two eminent personalities appointed by the Prime Minister, leader of opposition, and the Chief Justice of India. The constitutional validity of the 99th Constitutional Amendment and National Judicial Appointment Commission Act 2014 was challenged before the Apex Court. In this case, a constitution bench of the 5 judges with a majority of 4:1 struck down the 99th Constitutional Amendment Act and National Judicial Appointment Commission Act as unconstitutional, holding that the constitution of the commission will amount to an infringement of judicial independence and a violation of the separation of power. Now, moving to the third aspect, like judicial legitimacy. Come to the point meaning of legitimacy. The term legitimacy entails the attributes of being lawful, genuine, or valid. It refers to a normative concept such as justice and justification. It is acceptable by the people as it conforms to the higher norms of basic principle indispensable for running a state. Thus, we can see that judicial legitimacy is an intricate concept which entails acceptance for decision and inherent belief in the working and transparency of the system. As far as nature of judicial legitimacy is concerned, it can be examined on the 3 parameters such as sociological legitimacy, moral legitimacy, and legal legitimacy. Sociological legitimacy defines acceptability of judicial decision in the society as the judgment of courts are nothing but expression to social belief and practice. Moral legitimacy is a normative concept which requires the institutions to be respected, and legal legitimacy defines a situation where decisions of the courts are accepted as it is within the parameter of well defined scope of interpretive mandate of the court under the Constitution. Legitimacy demands public confidence and trust in order to attain sustainability and acceptance of its observation and reasons. Now, the present scenario, a case of legitimacy for the Supreme Court. In the current decade, the Supreme Court of India had given some of the path-breaking judgments, but at the same time, it had been criticized heavily for disturbing the independence and transparency of the institution it was known for. The progressive judgment of the Supreme Court, including judgment on various aspects like constitutionality of Aadhaar Act, Sabrimala Temple, like in Sabrimala temples, the Kerala High Court banned the entry of women from the age of 10 to 50 from entering the shrine. The Supreme Court said that the Constitution does not run on history, it is organic and vibrant. Justice D.Y. Chandrachud said that under the Article 25 of the Constitution, all citizens are free to pray or spread any religion. It means that the right to pray to you as a woman is not subject to any legislation. These are constitutional right for everyone. And regarding constitutionality of Section 377 IPC, Naj Foundation India Trust challenged the constitutionality of Article 377 under Article 14, 15, 19, and 24 before the Delhi High Court. In this case, the foundation contended that Section 377 reflects an antiquated understanding of the purpose of sex, namely as means of procreation, and has to place in modern society. LGBT individuals are now legally allowed to engage in consensual intercourse. One important aspect is Hadiya marriage, that is love jihad. On 9th April 2018, the Supreme Court delivered its judgment in two separate concurring opinions. It reversed the Kerala High Court judgment where it annuls Hadiya marriage of Safin Jahan. The High Court has no power to decide the just way of life or correct course of living for the Hadiya. The right to marry a person of one's choice is integral to Article 21. And choice of a partner lies within the exclusive domain of an individual and is part of the core zone of privacy, which is inviolable. Thus, the High Court was wrong in using its power under Article 226 to annul Hadiya marriage with Safin Jahan. There are some suggestions to improve the judicial process. The effective judicial process requires the cooperative effort of all the three organs of the government, that is legislature, executive and judiciary. The role of executive, the role of legislature and the role of judiciary must be separated to each other as per doctrine of separation of power theory. The legislature, being policy formulator, must perform the following works like parliament must in exercise of its power under the Article 32 clause 3 empowers the lower courts to exercise the writs jurisdiction within their local limits under so that common people may have a easy access to the justice. Further, Parliament must in consultation with judiciary to frame a time limit within which the matter should be disposed of and failure to attract the punishment. And in the context of executive role of executive is policy implementation and ordering of facts from each to ought. And delivery of justice is basically falls within the province of executive, which is rendered through access to the administrative authorities. The President under Article 124 subclause 3 clause A should also appoint the distinguished jurists as Supreme Court judges. The government should establish more fast track court to remove the arrears of the cases. It should also equip the judiciary with the modern technology like e-filing of suits, amendment, affidavits, etc. And in the context of judiciary, the role of judiciary is policy control which comes into the picture when executive fails to deliver the justice. In order to make judicial process effective, the court must observe following guidelines like judiciary must keep in mind that its work is to say authoritatively what the law, that is policy, is controlling. Judiciary must accept the norms of democracy and justice not only be done but it appears to be done. The Supreme Court must also correct its illegal uh, or wrong judgment which are still being followed in the country, and judges should play an active role in bringing the truth and not merely being a silent spectator of the dispute. Now, conclusion points: only acceptability and social legitimacy would enable the courts to do something which they can't do without over exercising their powers. The concerns of legitimacy have gone deeper in the system as on various important occasions the Supreme Court decided either not to interfere or to interfere only for the sake of informality. The whole exercise by the Supreme Court, which earned it respect and trust of the people, will be on risk. Thus, there is a need to have a balanced approach in judicial activism and to re establish the legitimacy of the Supreme Court, which it has somewhat lost owing to recent development. So these were the aspects about judicial process, judicial pronouncement, and judicial legitimacy. Thank you.